Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Tuesday Transformation with Patrice. I am so excited that you decided to join us this morning where we're transforming the way of your thinking. We're empowering you to overcome obstacles and we're igniting the passion, the power, and the potential that lies on the inside of each and every one of us on this morning and all year long. Our whole theme is dealing with the unstoppable momentum, with acceleration and expansion. I don't know about you, but my focus for 2025 is forward momentum. I want forward momentum in my faith. I want forward momentum in my life. And I want forward momentum in my purpose. For I believe that this is the year of manifestation. This is the year that things will be revealed to us. This is the year that we're going to find the great and the exceeding things in God on this year. And I am excited about what God is going to do. I'm excited about the movement that shall take place for in God in this year. I don't know about you, but I hope that you're so excited to see what an awesome God is going to do for us. So, we've been dealing with lessons and we've been talking about the unstoppable momentum that we need to have in order for God to unveil the secret things that we could become kingdom building and the kingdomship of God. And on this morning, it's no different than anything else. But this morning, I want to take and talk about David and Goliath, the confrontation that David and Goliath had. Because when we begin to look at this story in the Bible, and if you get an opportunity sometime throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout next day, check out the story in First Samuel. It starts around the 17th chapter and it goes through and it just talks about everything that has taken place with these two particular characters. But when we look at this lesson, what we're looking at is how faith, how preparation, and how action it can propel us to and towards victory. And what do we have victory over? We have victory over the biggest challenges that seems to face us in life. And I don't know about you, but I want you to know on today that you have victory. You've got victory in everything that comes your way. Victory is yours on today. So as we begin to deal with it, we're going to deal with some ingredients on today. We're going to deal with the ingredients and how to overcome the overwhelming odds that is taking place in our life. We all have some type of odds that we're facing in life today. But I don't know about you. I need some ingredients to become unstoppable. So let's get started. So let's talk about the two characters this morning. Now, we got first Goliath. And when we look at Goliath, Goliath represents the overwhelmingness. He represents the large challenge. He represents the instilling of fear and dismays that comes in our life. Why do I say that? And I want us to keep in mind that Goliath represents the challenge, the overwhelming challenges that we see in front of our faith, in front of our faces. Why? Because when we look at Goliath in the Bible, he's a giant Philistine warrior. He's from Gath. So everyone from there are extremely large. Everything that they do and everything that they possess becomes a large challenge. So when you look at him, he was an issue. He was a challenge. He was something that seemed overwhelming to the Israelites. So to Saul's troops, he was overwhelming. So when we look at him, he stood 9 feet tall. That is much taller than I am, and it's much taller than a whole bunch of us that is on this line. He was heavily armored, and what he had this wild or this wired massive spear in front of him. So what you seeing, or what the Israelites seen was this large challenge that was overwhelming him. And what he did is he ridiculed the Israelites. So he did it for 40 days, and he was instilling fear and dismays into Saul's troops, the Israelites. I want you to think for a moment, what is the large challenge that seems to be prevailing in your life right now? And it's instilling some fear and some dismays in you. It is overwhelming you, this challenge that you see in front of your face. But then we have another character. We've got David on this morning. And I want you to realize that David is going to represent the momentum that's going to overcome this greatest challenge. I'm so glad that God just does not leave us alone. He sends us someone to help us out. He sends someone when things seems to be so overwhelming, when things seems to be so enlarged in front of our face. God will send us someone. So here comes David. David, he was the youngest son of Jesse from Bethlehem, and he was not initially part of Saul's troops. He was young and considered to be inexperienced in the battle. How many of us, when we look at our battle, we think that we're young and inexperienced in the battle that we're about to fight? When we look at our battle, we don't see the object of unstoppable momentum. What we see is something that is bigger than us, that we can't seem to get over. We can't seem to get around it, and it leaves us trembling and still with fear and dismays in us. When we begin to look at the story, there are some certain things about David that I want you to keep in your mind as we travel this morning. The first thing about David is that he was young and inexperienced. But the next thing about David was that his father had sent him to deliver provision to his eldest brothers while they were serving in Saul's body. Remember, he was sent by his father to deliver provision. I want you to understand on this morning, irregardless of the large challenges that seems to prevail in front of your face, that seems greater than what they actually are, I'm so glad that the Father will send provision. Hallelujah to God. Irregardless of what you may be going through on this morning, the Father will send provision down to the army where the troops are. So where you are on today, the Father sent provision. What happens when David arrived at the battlefield? He heard what Goliath was doing. Goliath was defining them. Goliath was stirring up stuff against them. He was ridiculing them. He was calling them out. In this day and time, he would have been calling him out for a fight. And when you're called out for a fight and you're afraid of people, what ultimately happened is that you become fearful and you become dismayed. So what happened is David was hearing all this stuff that was being stirred up by this great Philistine. And he was mocking, he was saying, you're mocking the living God. So you're mocking the point that you're big and you're large and you think that everyone is afraid of you. He said, but I come to let you know on today that the Father sent me and he's delivering provision in the midst of the war on this morning. So whatever your challenge is on today, I want you to know that provision has been sent for you. So let's talk about some ingredients in this story that we can make applicable to our life. The first ingredient that I want to talk about when we look at this story is that momentum begins with faith. When we begin to look at David, David's faith is the foundation of his confidence. I need someone to understand on today that your momentum, your unstoppable momentum, is going to begin with faith. And your faith is going to be the foundation of the confidence you have. Let's keep going. David didn't see Goliath as being something that was unbeatable. He didn't see him as being a challenge or a gigantic challenge that he could not beat. He was not unbeatable on today, but he saw him as merely a challenge that God had already equipped him to overcome. Why was it a challenge that God had already equipped him to overcome? Because God sent him. And when he sent him power pack with the provision that he need to become overcomers. I want you to know on today that God has already equipped you to become overcomers in whatever it is that might seem large as a challenge in front of your face. Let me tell you a little bit something about David, because David knew that he was power packed. He knew that he was already equipped to become an overcomer. He said, he looked at Goliath and said, this ain't nothing to me. I got the power to overcome everything this large man is saying to me. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at him and I'm beginning to see him as something small in front of my face. He says, so what I'm going to do, he think he's large and he's in charge. He says, what I'm going to do, I'm going to volunteer to fight for us. Isn't that just like when God equips us, when God gives us the power, when we know that we have provision from God, we begin to talk like we are power packed. We begin to bark loud to let the challenge know that you might be a challenge at this second. But I need you to continue to look out because you never know when I'm going to come. You never know what I'm going to throw at you. So David had begun to be filled with zeal. But I want you to know that the zeal and the faith that David possessed was because he was being sent as provision. So he became thirsty. His adrenaline began to accelerate. He said, I'm going to do for this man what all of y'all, Saul's troops, what all of y'all are afraid to do. Don't worry about it. I hear him over here barking at you. He said, but I'm going to take care of him for you, you, and you. I come to let you know on this morning, God's going to take care of every challenge that you have in your life, everything that seems to be big in front of your face. I want you to know that provision has already been taking place for you. You've already been equipped to overcome. Remember, last year in 2024, we were giving you some tools for you to get ready to cross over in 2025. Those was the preparation and the equipment you need to become an overcome. So my first ingredients was momentum begins with faith. When we look at it, my second ingredient, preparation, is meeting opportunity. I want you to know that your preparation in 2024 was for the opportunity that's presented to you in 2025. You need to understand that God prepared you for this time of manifestation in 2025. When you look at the story, David's time as a shepherd prepared him for the unstoppable momentum that he was going to have in his confrontation with Goliath. Let's look at it. David spent 7 years enhancing his skills with a sling. He was protecting the sheep from the predators that were coming the way. He didn't waste his time, but he was in preparation for this defining moment. I need you to understand this morning that you have been in preparation for your defining moment. I don't know when your moment's going to come. I don't know how your moment's going to come. But I want you to know on this morning that you're prepared for when the moment comes. We've got to look at what skills and experience that we have developed that's preparing us for the breakthrough that we're going to receive. That's preparing us for the acceleration in the expansion. Look at your skills. Look at the experience that you have gone through in this life that's preparing you for that defining moment. I need somebody to drop in the chat this morning. I got a defining moment that's coming my way, and I'm prepared for it. So when we began to look at David, the one that was sent with a provision, his adrenaline, remember, it's accelerating. He's getting prepared. He was prepared for the opportunity. So he had no doubt in his mind about being an overcomer. He knew exactly what God was going to do for him. So his next thing is that he began to focus on his strength. That's my next ingredient for this morning. I need you to focus on your strength as you going through this time. I need you to understand that David rejected Samuel's armor. Isn't that something? At first, they didn't want him to fight because he was young and inexperienced against the challenge of Goliath. But then when Saul consented for him to fight, to represent he began to put his clothing on David. Isn't that something? At the moment when you got the go ahead, somebody always wants to put their clothing on you. I want you to know on this morning that David knew that he could not fight with Saul's clothing. He knew he could not fight being somebody that he was not called to be. Instead, he said, I got to use my own unique ability. I want us to understand on this line this morning, each and every one of us have our own unique ability. When it comes time to fight your own challenge, don't put on someone else's clothing. And don't allow the clothing of someone else to become part of your garment. Wear your own garment to your own fight. Use your own ability to fight your challenge. Your challenge is not the same as someone else's challenge. You can't fight your challenge with somebody else's garments on you. So David understood that, and he understood that he had to use his own unique ability. He had to focus on his own strength. His Saul's garments was not going to fit him for this fight. So God doesn't ask us to fit our garments with someone else's mold. God equips us for the battle that we are meant to fight. I can't fit the mold of my friend Lorraine, but I've got to fit the mold of my own self. I can't fit the mold, thank God, of Pastor on the line, but I've got to fit the mold of my own self. I got to fight my own battle with my own garments. Your garments might be too big for me, or my garments might be too small for you. So wear your own clothing to your own fight. That's the bottom line of that situation. Focus on your own strength. I want to emphasize to us on the line the importance of embracing and the importance of embracing and the importance of maximizing our individual gifts and our individual talents. We've got to take a moment to reflect on our own strength and how we're going to use our own garments effectively. When we begin to look at another ingredient on this morning is action creates momentum. I need you to understand that there's action that is required of you on today. Your action is going to create your momentum on this morning. David's critical action created the momentum that he needed. David just didn't believe in victory, but when he got to the battle line, when he began to go to fight Goliath, what he did is he ran towards Goliath. And what did he run towards Goliath with? Slinging his own garments, slinging his stones that was going to shield or that was going to seal his triumphant victory. David understand, I've got my own clothing on. I'm going to fight with my own weapons. My own action is going to create my momentum. So let me start running to my challenge. Why? Because I'm power packed. Why? Because I've got the power to overcome every situation that's going to come my way. There is power in taking bold steps of faith. There is power in knowing that God is with you. There is power and understand that he walks with you and he talks with you along this narrow path of life, along this journey that we're taking. So even when fear comes to try to hold you, to grip you, to keep you paralyzed in one place, you've got to look at that fear and declare, I've got the power on today. I want you to be encouraged to run towards your challenge instead of hesitating, instead of looking at that challenge and making it larger than what it is. I've got a call to action for you on this morning. I want you to identify one bold step that you can take towards facing your Goliath in this week. Just think about one step that I can take towards facing, one bold step of faith that I can go towards the challenge of my Goliath in my life, that I will know that God is with me. My next ingredient is God's power in our weakness. We've got to know that we don't fight battles on our own, but we fight battles according to God's power, because the Bible talks about in my weakness, in the point of me feeling overwhelmed, in the point of these things feeling or seeming larger than what they are, God's power is what comes in and strengthens me. God's power is what comes in my time or in my vulnerable moment to let me know that yet I'm weak, but he makes me strong. So I need us to reflect on the ultimate lesson of the story. And what is the lesson of this story that I'm trying to bring out? That David's victory reminds us that it's not about the size of our challenge. It's not about the strength of our challenge. It's not about the resources that we have about our challenge, but it's about God's power working through us. So whatever you're facing on today, I want us to remember that God can use stones and slings. He can use the stones in the sling to create an unstoppable momentum. He doesn't need to use something big to come against your big challenge. He used the very small stones in a sling of a shepherd boy who was taking care of sheep in the field to come against this large challenge. David created an unstoppable momentum for more on today. So in my closing on this morning, I want to close with some call to action steps. I just want to remind you on today that you've got the unstoppable momentum, and you've got the unstoppable momentum to conquer, to overcome any challenge that you have. So my first ingredients on this morning was momentum starts with faith. My second ingredient on this morning was preparation met opportunity. My third ingredient for these challenges was to focus on your strength. My fourth ingredient is that bold action fuels your momentum. And then the last thing was trust God's power in your weakness, because although you may seem weak, God is strong in the midst of it. I want us to reflect on today as we travel along this way about Goliath and taking one step towards our Goliath situation. I don't know what step you need to take. I don't know how you need to take the steps, but all I know on today, it took a young lad to come against this big warrior, the big time warrior in this battle, and he overcame the large challenge that seemed to be so enormous in front of his face. On today, my Tuesday transformation tidbit for you is in God, no giant is too great. Whatever the situation in your life, in God, no giant is too great. There is no obstacle that is too large. There is no dream that is too far away that you can't fulfill on today. God will give us the faith, he will give us the courage, and he will give us the action to create unstoppable momentum in our life. Be encouraged on today to let you know that you've got the power to overcome. There is no giant that's too great in your life, no obstacle that's too large, no dream that is too far. You've got faith, you've got courage, and you've got action. You got to have the action to go along with your courage and your faith to create an unstoppable momentum in your life. Be encouraged, my brother. Be encouraged, my sister. And you have an amazing day. Shalom.